Hallmark card optimisms can almost deny that there was the other half of the glass that was empty, or deny it's a problem. And I'm not really a purchaser of denying where there's a problem. And the community needs to say, here's what's unfair. Here's how I feel unfair as a Black man or a person of color or whatever situation. Here's my problem with my relationship with you as cops. Well, the police got to get clear to go, okay, our whole force isn't screwed up. We have to have law and order. Do we all agree on that? Yes, we can all agree on that. We got a few bad apples that don't follow through on their duty in the right way when they're under the gun, under the heat of the moment. That's what I mean. There are cops that have done that. So few of these bad apples need to be removed, but we need to make sure we're training them better. Now, also the cops need to go to the communities and go, can y'all remember and understand our point of view that we're like the tow truck driver. We're not called when there's good news. We're called when it's bad news. So we're coming in going, looking for trouble. All right. So we're already under stress if we even get a call. So can y'all help us in our way that we communicate? Can we get trust again that if a cop says, hey, stand still, take your hands out of your pocket, hold them up. Yep, I'm doing that. That something's not going to happen to us.
Or, when you see these horrible reactions that cops have to situations where they do completely overstep their boundaries and abuse people. Yep. I think a lot of those people are really fucked up by the time they get to that point. And a lot of those people were fucked up before
before they even became a cop, or they became a cop for the right reason. They had personal problems before. Cop.
And we need to filter those people out, and that also comes through training, the same kind of training that they filter people out through the military. And I think that counseling and training and then communication with the community is what we need. We don't need to defund them. It seems like a popular social sentiment that people are repeating because it puts you in this ideology of a person who cares and is progressive. And if you're looking at the consequences of how this is playing out in New York City, homicides are up by hundreds of %, burglaries, armed robberies, everything's up. It's not good. The defunding of the police has been horrible for New York City. The consequences have been the exact opposite of what everybody hoped they'd be.
Dude, I'm with you. Training and have more reverence for the job and understand they're called in they're not called in when it's good news.
So here we are, once again living out the same cycle of dysfunction that has become a formula all too familiar these days. We are told once again by the Mockingbird media that a Black man was shot by a white cop, which of course means racism. So the Black community responds by assaulting people, burning down their own neighborhoods, and looting both big box chain stores and Black-owned businesses alike. The media downplay or ignore the facts of the case, including that in nearly every one of these situations, the Black man who was shot was a career criminal who aggressively brandished a weapon while resisting arrest at the time of the shooting. The cops are called murderers who are hunting Black people, and the families of the violent criminal talk about how he was a big teddy bear, a gentle soul who wouldn't hurt a fly, who had dreams of becoming a rapper or a sports star. Either that or he was mentally ill and needed a social worker instead of a cop. Then they sue the city for wrongful death and set up a GoFundMe and become wealthy overnight by capitalizing on white guilt. And night after night, the cities burn and the stores get looted. And if the media do cover it at all, they make sure that we know how peaceful this destruction is. For the next few days, everybody talks about fostering community and improving understanding, about counseling and communication and police training and defunding the police, and how Black people are constantly abused and victimized in white supremacist America until the whole thing happens all over again. I've written before about how the relationship the media and leftists have with black people is one characterized by the same kind of codependency common in addict-enabler relationships. The conversation you just saw between Matthew McConaughey and Joe Rogan is exactly the same conversation that happens all the time, and it doesn't seem to be solving anything. I thought it was interesting how McConaughey mentioned that he doesn't like to deny that a problem exists, but that's exactly what he's doing in this conversation, just like everyone else who continues to enable black people in their devastating, destructive behavior. Instead of calling out the cold, hard reality of black violence and the massive disproportionality in which it occurs, we are misdirected by whataboutism. Like the time that one white guy stabbed a cop with a knife and was tased instead of shot, which is, of course, further evidence of white privilege. We hear the chorus of voices of those telling us that cops should know how to de-escalate an intense situation, unaware of the irony that the same people feeding us such lines are those who respond to these situations by throwing violent tantrums for months on end, and who consider the use of the N-word grounds for justified violence. There are, of course, valid arguments to be made about the ramifications of compassion fatigue, burnout, and post-traumatic stress when humans are exposed to traumatic, life-threatening events as a routine job hazard, as cops undoubtedly are. Another point of consideration, which is almost never mentioned in these conversations, is how militarized the police have become. Not because of white supremacist cops who only took the job so they could brutalize blacks with impunity, but because of the Israelization of municipal police forces. Although that too might be too racist for some to consider. But for right now, what we are talking about is the root of the problem that people like McConaughey and Rogan would rather not address and just pretend doesn't exist. That black people are enabled in their dysfunctional behavior and feel entitled to commit crimes, to violently act out, and to provoke situations where they suffer consequences for their actions, and then loot and riot and burn down cities in response, claiming perpetual victimhood all the while. And when the propagandists and the apologists fail to point out these obvious patterns, they themselves are complicit and are incentivizing such criminality. And in the end, we all suffer. As I've stated in previous videos, the first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem and that life has become unmanageable. We can continue to pretend like white supremacist cops and boogaloo boys are constantly victimizing innocent black people for no reason at all. We can talk about systemic racism and communication and empathy and the virtues of being anti-racist allies all we want. But until we acknowledge the primary problem, all of us will continue to live out this same hell over and over. Anyone who even mentions that black people might have a responsibility to improve their situation, they are attacked and labeled racist. All of us collectively have decided that when it comes to the issue of race in this country, that we prefer comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. How do you think this will continue to work out for us?
Let me ask you a question. Will voting prevent bloodshed? Meaning like, okay, we get Trump out, will that prevent bloodshed?
I think the only thing that will prevent bloodshed is if they stop killing us. I don't think that us as a people can handle like one more hashtag. I know we're at the breaking point. There's a new Negro, and that new Negro, that new black person is not scared.